What's up guys, it's me Jeremy. This video's been a long time coming, but I was really busy with some schoolwork and I figure it's better late than never. Anyway, Season 5 has a ton of changes primed for the league and it's shaping up to be quite an interesting meta. So this is my analysis of the Season 5 changes, not including patch 421, but my thoughts haven't really changed at all between the patches anyways, so let's get started. Starting with the most significant changes, the jungle. There's a bunch of new jungle items replacing the old spirit items. The first tier gives you an upgrade to your smite, and then the next gives you like a full stat upgrade comparable to finishing one of the old jungle items. From what I can tell, the poacher's knife build is for counter jungling, ranger's trailblazer is for junglers with single target wave clear, skirmisher's saber is for skirmishing, and lastly stalker's blade is for ganking that additional CC. I would argue that Poacher's Knife is actually not that good. The movement speed buff it gives after clearing a camp only lasts 2 seconds, so it's not really long enough to help you with ganks. It's just to escape after counter jungling, but you can just get Ranger's Trailblazer instead and then clear the camp much faster. As well as Skirmisher's Saber is going to help you counter jungle, since the enemy jungler won't be able to duel you as easily. And Stalker's Blade does seem to be quite situational, since the slow isn't really needed that much. Ranger's Trailblazer is pretty solid, and Skirmisher's Saber is actually incredibly ridiculous due to the damage reduction it causes. It lasts for 6 seconds, so it can't really be kited out or avoided, and it's really useful, since it's going to help you duel out opponents with ease. And the next tier of upgrades is quite simple, and every single one is actually really strong. The Warrior upgrade is the replacement for Elder Lizard, the Magus upgrade is the replacement for Spectral Wraith, the Juggernaut upgrade is the replacement for Ancient Golem, and the Devourer upgrade is the replacement for Feral Flare. The stats they give are somewhat stronger than the old jungle items, but they don't really give bonus gold anymore, so this is a buff to the junglers early to mid game, and a slight nerf to their late game. And in addition, Devourer's Blade right now on 420 was really overpowered, so it did see some nerfs in 421 to put it in line with the other jungle items. In addition, you get a buff every time you use smite on a camp. The buff from both the red and blue buff with this interaction is mostly insignificant. The buff from wolves that gives vision is a little bit situational and requires a bit of luck, since your opponents do kind of have to just walk through it. And the buff from both Gromp and the Raptors is insanely useful and is really strong. Gromp is going to increase your clear speed by quite a bit, and so quite often, especially on purple side, starting on Gromp and using smite is the best jungle route. As well as getting the sweeper that activates when you're actually on top of a ward from the Raptors is really great, since you can help set up ganks a ton. Remember that warding the Raptor camp is a potential technique to counterplay the smite buff, since after the camp is smited, it will immediately give vision of the ward you placed on the camp and make the Oracle's buff go away. Jungle camps having longer respawns means less farming and more ganking for junglers too, but the camps themselves are stronger and worth a bit more. But overall, junglers get much less gold now, especially since the jungle items no longer give bonus gold. Double Golems and Gromp are now really important to give to bot lane too whenever possible as well for the lane experience, so take that into account when planning out your starting area. There's also some interesting tricks to micro the aggro of a camp as a ranged champion, so ranged champs don't take that much damage in the jungle. And we have the Scuttlecrab camp. Now in actuality, the new Scuttlecrab camp doesn't give that much gold or experience at all, and so it's not really meant to be like an extra jungle camp that you farm, but rather it's a mini objective that's used to help control Dragon and Baron, and should mostly just be taken when your team is going to group on that area. Overall, the jungle itself is stronger and more difficult, especially due to the fact that you only get 2 potions now. This is a buff to high sustain junglers and a pretty big nerf to junglers who have trouble keeping their health up, especially early. The new jungle items in itself are really strong and definitely define 4 unique playstyles for jungler. This in theory would create a ton of jungle diversity and make a lot of champions viable, but the increase in strength and difficulty of the jungle kind of stops that to some extent, as well as just farming in itself is a little bit less powerful now since the respawn timers changed, but counter jungling is a bit more rewarding than before. Moving on to the changes to Dragon and Baron. Now, the main thing to note is that the damage of both Dragon and Baron has increased significantly. Both do a ton more damage now, although Dragon has actually become much easier to rotate aggro and avoid taking damage with, since its attack now has a much longer animation, so you can still take Dragon early, you just need to rotate the aggro properly. And of course the changes to what you get for killing one. Dragon gives the stacking buff. The buff for the first kill is really good, and scales quite well into late game. The buff for the second kill is pretty much useless, and the buff for the third kill is really strong. And the fourth kill, while the buff may not be that significant, it's really important because it does set you up for that all-important fifth kill later on, which is absolutely insane. And overall, I would say that Dragon is actually worth more than it was before, since if you can get to 5, the buff is just so ridiculous, stronger than Baron buff, stronger than pretty much anything. And, of course, speaking of Baron buff, it no longer gives regen, gives a bit less AD and AP that now scale up based on level, while giving a huge buff to your minions. Now, this buff to the minions is absolutely insane, but it has to be made use of. It increases the sieging power and split pushing power of your team by a huge amount, and so your team should group and siege or split push after taking Baron to make use of that buff. Overall, I would say that the new Baron buff is significantly more valuable than the old one, as long as your team makes use of it, since it makes sieging so incredibly easy. And the towers got some changes as well by giving shields, and of course the inhibitor and nexus turrets are a little bit stronger than before because of the laser mechanics. And so overall, these are comeback mechanics that Riot has introduced to counter snowballing and massive tower dives. I think it's a pretty good change, as tower dives are a little bit more risky to do, but it does make turtling a bit easier, especially in high wave clear comps. But with the changes to Baron and Dragon, those things aren't that major, and overall, like, sieging and snowballing becomes quite significant once the team that's ahead starts to pick up some objectives. And so early kills are worth the normal amount now, but have reduced assist gold. So this does increase snowballing by a decent amount, and in addition, the way stats per level work has changed. So you essentially get less stats early, but more stats later on. This is also an anti-snowballing mechanic that has been introduced and reduces the power of minor level advantages, such as being level 3 versus level 4 opponents, levels where there aren't a major power spike. Overall, I would actually have to say that even with the comeback mechanics, the game itself is a bit more snowbally, especially due to the objectives of Dragon and Baron, since when a team starts to ramp those up, it just becomes such a huge advantage. And so closing out games by teams can be a little bit easier when you have a lead, since the new buffs help you do that so much more. It's kind of hard to say what this will do for the meta, but I would expect sieging to remain a strong tactic, while the Dragon and Baron buffs is a strong buffs to junglers with great objective control like Nunu, since they can have a much larger impact on the game due to the fact that those buffs are much more important. And of course, there's also a few new items and changes to old items. Early game magic resistance is a little bit more difficult to get and a bit more expensive as well. This is quite a good buff early game to mages that do AP damage, so expect to see some of those more bursty, assassin-y mages in the game. In addition, the armor items overall got nerfed early game and buffed late game, but the difference in both situations is not really as big as it is for magic resistance. It's just that the full items are a little bit cheaper, but the early game components are a little bit more expensive. It's not really that impactful. And we have some buffs to both Oathwrecker and Banner of Command, and while these items still have quirky and difficult to make use of actives, there could potentially be some strategies in competitive play now with these items, as the stats are much more useful now and more tailored to the game state. In addition, for the new items, Raptor's Cloak builds into Oathwrecker, so it's not really that useful, but Crystalline Bracer is pretty strong, and Righteous Glory, that essentially has a talisman active but only for chasing, it's pretty strong as a tank-based item. The fact that the big portion of stats it gives as mana means that the item isn't actually that good, since mana is a poor stat for tanks, so overall the item is just kind of okay, but it can be used on champions who benefit a ton from the active and from having mana, like Skarner and Udyr. And last but not least, the changes to elixirs. Now, I actually really like the elixir changes. They changed them around a bit and added some new ones. Elixir of Iron is for tanks, Ruin is actually for split pushing, and to some extent sieging, Sorcery is for mages, and Wrath is for AD carries. The Elixir of Ruin is quite strong for split pushing, since the health helps you duel a lot, while you can also take towers a bit faster. It would work for sieging too, but it would only be worth it when sieging on your carries, in which case Sorcery and Wrath are probably more useful for that situation anyways. And in fact, Elixir of Wrath and Sorcery are pretty insane. As far as Wrath goes, the fact that it gives you what is essentially lifesteal is amazing. Lifesteal is an incredibly powerful stat for AD carries, and while you won't be able to lifesteal from creeps, having an item like this that gives what is somewhat close to lifesteal can be really strong in teamfights. And so overall, the new elixirs are much stronger and much more game impacting than before, and they cost more too, so it's definitely good that they are able to do that. And really, that's just about everything I could come up with the Season 5 changes. It's going to be a pretty exciting season, with a pretty different meta too. My name is Jeremy, and that's it for my video on Season 5. Be sure to check me out over at twitch.tv/Jeremy_GamingCurios, stay connected at facebook.com/GamingCurios, tweet me at GamingCurios, drop a like, share this video, and make sure to subscribe for some more awesome content in the future. And as always, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.